Welcome one and all to another edition of the Defo Show with Lubie here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, brought to you by Water Cleanup of Florida. The heat, the humidity, the rain. Oh my, it's here, and it is not a friend to your home or office, but what is? Water Cleanup of Florida. 954-579-0356 is that number to call to get your friend to come to your home or your office and alleviate all your water or fire issues. 954-579-0356. With over 60 years of combined experience, Michael, Robert, George, their entire team is at your service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I've said it before and I'll say it again. They were there for my wife and myself. We've dealt with a lot of service industry companies. And look, in the end, they don't always, but they usually get the job done. But it's usually a pain in the rear. It wasn't with Water Cleanup of Florida. It was actually a delight. They are fantastic in the communication game and in the restoration issue game. You have something with your home office when it comes to water damage, fire damage, or you're trying to prevent it, which is smart in this day and age. Act ahead of time. They are the people to call. 954-579-0356. Check them out on their website, WCUFL.com, at Water Cleanup FL on all the socials. I'm telling you, if you have the schmutz, Water Cleanup of Florida has the guts. The Miami Heat have had the guts for a long time in South Florida, and they've hung around as being relevant, and they've hung around as being a title contender no matter what they're seeding. Well, this offseason has been very quiet for like the third or fourth year for the Miami Heat, while a lot of other teams, not only in the NBA, but the Eastern Conference itself has made moves. We talk with Mr. Miami Heat, Mr. 5 Reasons Sports, about the Heat's offseason and what may be still to come on the Defo Show with Lubie. Ethan Scoop Skolnick joins us on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Ethan Scoop Skolnick, of course, the man behind 5 Reasons Sports Network and the ultimate authority when it comes to, I don't want to just say the Miami Heat, maybe even the NBA.
He's great with the NBA.
I mean, for as many shows as Windhorst has, I don't think he can really come close to the knowledge and the depth of knowledge that is possessed by this man, one Ethan Scoop Skolnick. Scoop, how are you, my friend?
Good to be with you guys. I don't know about the Windhorst thing. Come on.
Oh, no, you're right up there. I mean, you can have your Peter Vessies and all of these other guys. I'll take a Scoop Skolnick opinion anytime. All right, we were talking about this last couple of days, touched on this. We were trying to figure out what is the sickest of the sick level of degeneracy that you can come to. And I thought about this time I was in Atlantic City a couple of years ago, might have even been last year, and I see these guys pouring over like mounds of paperwork. And what looked like it was computer printouts and technology, and they had a ton of handwritten notes. And I thought, wow, these guys must be expert baseball handicappers. And I walk over to them and I say, hey, some stupid thing like, hey, you like anything tonight? I overheard your conversation. And I'm expecting them to give me like the California Angels or whatever. And it turns out that they were handicapping NBA Summer League basketball. Is that the lowest level of depravity, in your opinion, when you're betting Summer League basketball proposition bets, like over-unders on Zach Edey rebounds? What do you think? I mean, is that a real gauge of anybody's ability to play, and should people be betting on this?
I did it the other day. I don't know if that counts.
Oh, really?
Went over on what's his the second round pick, Pell Larson. Went over on his points. Didn't win.
No, really.
So I don't know. I mean, the fact that I'm on here with you after all these years, and basically something that I'm doing that you think is beyond the pale of gambling depravity. I mean,
wow, things have come full circle.
Think about it. Yes,
I mean, this is baby.
This is scarier than Project 2025, Scoop. I mean.
Well, nothing's scarier than that. That it might be part of Project 25.
Pairs Larson's. Oh, what was the over/under total?
10.5 points.
Oh my God! And he went over
10.5 points.
And what did he do? He ripped 29 down.
9.
Oh, he went under. Oh, he went under with 9. Oh, Jesus.
That's classic. All right, well, I guess that kind of addresses that question.
Yeah, you fit right in.
The other thing that I think is a little bit sick, but it's interesting. I don't know what it says about the human condition or the nature of human beings in general. Not to get overly philosophical about this, but why do we care so much and seem to get some kind of vicarious thrill out of finding out that some player that left our team also got screwed in the process? and lost money. And you were all over this thing. Lubie was telling me all of the detail that he had that he claimed to be his own. He later admitted on the show came from you on this whole Caleb Martin thing.
Well, I don't know if it's that anybody's happy that Caleb didn't get his money. Or the money he could have gotten. I think it's, well, a couple things. I think one, I think people were interested in the fact that the Heat were so interested in bringing him back. I didn't, the way they've been with some of their own guys, the developmental guys, is they've tended to take a step back lately.
Sorry about the barking dog, by the way.
Yeah, they didn't make an offer to Strus. Vincent, they didn't end up retaining. They made him an offer, but it wasn't what he wanted. This was a significant offer, and I think that as I was finding out about the process, it was pretty clear that Caleb was not represented well by his agent. That essentially the Heat.
Master P, did he sign with Master P? Is he out of jail yet?
Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, look, the Heat. It does remind me of the Ricky Williams thing a little bit. It also the Dennis Schroeder thing. I mean, look, the thing was that a few years ago, where Dennis Schroeder, got offered a big contract, his agent turned it down. He ended up taking the minimum. Now, Caleb didn't end up taking the minimum, but when they were going through the process, the Heat were very clear to him. They were like, "Okay, this is the new CBA. If you opt in your contract to $7.1 million, we can give you this. Okay, we can give you a 40% raise first year, 8% raises thereafter, up to 5 years total." So they basically offered him 4 years for 58 on top of the $7 million to start. They specifically told his agent, who, by the way, is not inexperienced. This is an agent who had Kevin Garnett at one point. He lost Kevin Garnett and sued for him. All right. But he had significant clients in the past. He doesn't have any now. Maybe there's a reason for that.
Well, and it's unlikely to get more in the future, based on this.
Precisely. And so basically, they said to him, "Listen, this is the offer for now, but if you don't take it, if you opt out, we can't offer this. Just by CBA rules, we're not going to have available. Plus, we got to move on with some other things." And they said, "Don't come back to us in 24 hours." He came back in 24 hours. He asked for the same deal. They turned down. He thought his market was somewhere out there around, the $13 to $15 million range.
Yeah.
And then he came back, and the Heat were like, "We can't give you that anymore." Like, okay, we could do something. There were things the Heat could have done. They could have done a 1-and-1 deal 1 year in, and then maybe keep his bird rights, pay him later. Okay. They could have, but he's basically matched what Philadelphia gave him ultimately. And then they wouldn't have re-signed Highsmith. And yet, but by then, the agent never even came back for that. He came back for the big deal, which they couldn't give him. He didn't come back for that. So the guy goes to Philadelphia. I talked to Caleb at the end of last season. He wanted to stay. So it's not a bad second option for him. I mean, he's going to be playing with Paul George and Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. He's a good fit, but it was just a bad situation on the agent's part. And as somebody in the organization said to me, "Look, maybe we dodged a bullet. We don't know." I mean, it was a significant amount of money. And it wasn't, I can tell you, it wasn't a total consensus in the organization. But the majority of people who make decisions, there's like 5 or 6 who are involved in that process, were good with it. And so that's why they went ahead and did it. So we'll see. Look, they signed Highsmith. He gives them some what Caleb gave him, not the athleticism, probably better defensively. He'll help. But, the overall thing is that the roster looks largely the same, at least the character of it, that it did last season.
Was there some unknown factor that contributed to the dramatic fall-off of not just expectation that was sparked by his great run in the postseason just a little bit prior, and then kind of did a vanishing act last year? What was there some underlying reason for that? I mean, was it something team-related, something that happened with him, or was it just a case where a guy showed bright promise and then was unable to fulfill it in the follow-up and consolidate?
Well, I think, Defo, a lot of it is the new CBA. And I think what we're seeing is that there's really no middle class now. The way that this thing is structured is it's like you're giving guys who aren't really max players max money, crazy money to keep them. Now, the one team that sort of has held off has been the Pelicans with Ingram. But for the most part, like you're giving like all max players are not the same, but they're being treated the same. And then what happens is then it's like, okay, what money is left under the aprons? Because these teams don't want to pay. Certainly the second apron, the Heat won't. The first apron, a lot of teams don't want to go there. The Heat are there and will stay there most likely. But so it's basically like, okay, who do we fill in and what kind of minimums can we get? And there's just, that class of kind of and it's crazy to say this is middle class, but like kind of the 12 to $22 million player, like it doesn't seem to exist right now. I mean, if you look at the teams that signed players this offseason in the free agency, they're all teams under the apron. The teams over the apron really didn't sign anybody. Now the Heat knew, for instance, when the Heat made the move for Terry Rozier, it basically took them out of free agency. Like they knew when they made the move that it took them out of free agency. It was also going to make trading more difficult because they were giving up one of their tradable first-round picks. So they made a conscious decision at the deadline last year, a couple weeks before the deadline, to give Jimmy some help. That's what everybody said that they wanted. They went and got a player that they thought would help them. He was starting to. He got hurt. They're counting on him being 100% for training camp. We'll see how that goes. But they knew at that point that like they were not going to be heavy players in free agency. And I just don't think a lot of Heat fans kind of understood that at the time. Heat fans just wanted Kyle Lowry gone. Now, if they had held on to the Kyle Lowry contract, let it expire, they would have had some money to play with, in free agency. Would they have done something with it the way the CBA is? I don't know. But they would have had options. Rozier was essentially their trade acquisition / free agent. And they have him on a 2-year contract, and they're going to have to get performance. I mean, that's just the way it is, and they're going to have to get fit, and that plays into the whole Tyler Herro thing.
Well, and that's what so if you look in the early days of the, I guess, free agency period, I don't know if they're still allowed to sign people or not, but we've seen movement, trades, and whatnot. More than, like you're saying, free agency. You've seen the Knicks make moves. You've seen the Sixers make moves. You've seen the Celtics go and re-up their group. So you've seen a lot of movement throughout the East, and the Heat are just sort of sitting there, and people are forgetting them, and it's fine because you look at the same roster. Everyone adds. They don't add. You assume that means the roster is getting worse, which a lot of it, to me, was just, if they can stay healthy, their roster was better than what their seeding was. But again, that health concern is a major concern. The way people are talking, and even you guys are talking, it feels they're sort of like it's done. And to me, it's just, and I understand everything happens at the beginning, even like the NFL, and then it sort of just goes away. But to me, the Heat were always good about letting things simmer and then maybe later trying to pop with something. To me, the Herro thing, it's not an experiment per se, but it feels like it's run its course. And a lot of us have sort of agreed to that. But he's still there, and you're not hearing anything about his name. They still have a lot of the other guys that could go into a trade, Duncan Robinson, the 2 younger guys, and Jaquez Jr. and Jovic. They still have picks going forward. Like, that still sits there. Is that something that could be a possibility going forward, or is this a roster you really do think they run with? Because to me, they're in this weird position where everyone wants to put the middle of the East ahead of them. I think they fit right in with the Magics and the Pacers and even the Knicks, who may have a better roster on paper, but I still don't trust a lot of their hope-for prey guys and Anunoby and Bridges. But they're not in that top echelon. They're not. Like, do you see them trying to make a move to get there, or is it really this where we are? Is this where they are?
I mean, I think they'll opportunistically look for things that can improve the roster or the fit. I mean, that's where I'm at with it. Right now they had one spot. I mean, they have 2 spots, but they had one kind of salary to use, and they used it on Highsmith. Now, will they trade Tyler at some point? I still think that's possible. They're not against it. Somebody in the organization, but they're not going to give him away. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah,
and I was somebody in the organization texted me yesterday and was like, "I have a question for you." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Okay." He says, "What is running it back?" I said, he says, "What is running it back?" Because that's all we hear is running back. He's not talking to me specifically.
Oh, it's not you. Yeah,
he's talking about the nature of roster. He says, because I'll tell you that only 7 guys are still here from the finals 2 years ago. So what is running it back? And I said, you know what running back is? It's trading Tyler.
Yes.
I mean, so you know what not running it back is? Yes. It's trading Tyler.
Yeah.
And he laughed. I mean, they know where the fans are at with this. But again, they're not going to just give him away. I mean, he had value. They were upset last offseason that people's perception of his value was not where they thought it should be, or where they believed actually it was with some. Now the value, I think, after what happened last year, missing more time, really struggling in 4 of the 5 playoff games, like, okay, and one of them was excellent, but the other 4, I think that his value has dipped. There's no question. Now, also, though, the contract, as some of the other contracts are exploding, doesn't look so bad. But as I said, there's really no middle class in the NBA, and his contract is an upper middle class contract. And so it's like, okay, teams are looking at it and are like, well, unless they dump players that they don't really want or need anymore, do they want to take on a $29-30 million a year contract for a guy who is not maybe going to be a star for them? It's not as bad as the Zach LaVine contract. Like, Heat fans want to trade a semi-bad contract for a worse contract. They don't really understand it. Trust me, they'd be frustrated as hell with Zach LaVine after about 5 games. Okay, I mean, he'd have one big scoring game, wouldn't get back on defense 3 times, and and then he'd be out with bad knees. And they'd be like, well, why did we just trade for a more expensive Tyler? Like, I don't understand. So I just think. I think that, look, they understand. The one thing I heard that was most encouraging is I heard the words from a high-level person saying, we're not delusional, okay? They know that on paper they are not a contender, but they think they still are positioned to become one. And I feel like, again, the trade deadline is still out there.
Okay.
We'll see what happens with Jimmy. They think they're going to get, Uber Jimmy basically this year because he's in a contract year. But they should give out T-shirts on the opening night. Contract year Jimmy. That's kind of what they're counting on. And the other pieces to kind of fall in place.
Design, yeah, looking like a page, some legal document on the front of the shirt. That might be a moneymaker for 5 reasons, which I would imagine the fans are screaming, saying, "Hey, how come we didn't do anything in the offseason? How the hell are we going to beat the Celtics?" So that certainly stimulates a lot of interest in it. One final thing on the hoops, I wanted to get into a little bit of what's happening with Miami in terms of Dolphin mania and the whole Tua saga. But it seems in Congress, Scoop, where you have TNT getting out of the game because the rights fees don't justify the money that they can accrue back, even if it's a lost leader for their episodes of Matlock. Still, I mean, they're getting out of the game. I mean, they were very successful at it, very well respected for doing it, gave them a lot of identity. So, and Lubie keeps alluding to declining ratings, and so you have networks unable to, pay themselves back for the enormous rights fees. But where is this money going to come from? I mean, when you're looking at all these staggering salaries. Hondo Havlicek has to be rolling over in his grave. I mean, the starting lineup is making $200 million for the Celtics this year. So, it seems to the fans, and I don't want to, seem like I'm, Robert De Niro in the movie The Fan, where you're like, they don't deserve this kind of money. Certainly they do, but where the fuck is it coming from? And can it sustain itself? Or are we under the illusion that the game, certainly during the regular season, is not nearly as popular as it should be to justify these kind of lofty salaries?
Yeah, I mean, I think the money will be there. I mean, if you look at the rights fees that they're talking about, I mean, it's significant. The regular season product is an issue. I don't think there's any question about that. The in-season tournament to me was cute. They need to change the triggers on what you get out of it, I think, to keep people interested in it. This idea of just giving the players a little extra money, I don't know, really sits well with fans, all the rest of that. I'm disappointed about the TNT thing because it's very hard to find, something that fans were universally behind. And,
yes.
And I think that there's no question that TNT's coverage was superior to ESPN's coverage. And it seems like we're always going to be stuck with ESPN for one way or the other. So, I think, my hope is that they bring a lot of elements into it, no matter who, whether it's NBC or whatever. But But look, the money's going to be there. Like, I mean, this is the same thing. It's like everybody talked about baseball and how it's become more of a niche sport and it's not a national sport anymore and all the rest of this. The money's still there. Like, I mean, they're basically, reruns of South Park get better ratings than Game 4 of the World Series now. But there's still the money there for the players. Yeah. I mean, you're still paying Ohtani what you're paying Ohtani and all the rest of it. So, the league is going to be fine. The problem, and there are a lot of young stars. I mean, Luka obviously didn't get over the hump, but he's there, and a lot of these other guys are not going away. I mean, just look at the Team USA roster. Like, there's plenty of star power in the league, and that's just the Team USA roster. That's not the rosters of all the foreign players that you've added to the mix who've developed their own personalities. We saw Giannis, get Greece to the Olympics now, and obviously I mentioned Luka, others. Canada has a loaded team. Like there's talent all over the place now, but the league needs to incentivize the regular season somehow to incentivize people to watch it. And right now it just seems like, again, let's just get to the playoffs and see what happens. And, All-Star weekend was a disaster last year. Like that needs to be fixed. So I think Silver has a lot of work to do. And as I said, the new CBA is a mess. It is just really bad. Like I don't know how either side agreed to it. It kind of feels like the players just wanted weed legalized and it was like, all right, we'll do whatever the hell else you want. That's it.
It's appropriate, isn't it?
I mean, it's basically what they got. Like, I've never seen a situation where like the NFL players seem to have done better in their last CBA than the NBA players. Yeah, that's rare. Like usually MLB they do great. Look, I cover the league for a living, so I'll still be engaged in it. But I'm not going to admit that the regular season product is good right now. It's not.
No, schlep it down there to the Miami Arena, to see some low-level team, the Heat's arena to see some low-level team in the regular season when three guys are sitting out on both sides. Kind of rough. All right, a couple of other things real quick. We haven't had you on since the Panthers won the Stanley Cup. You were down there on the ice, Scoop, and you've been covering sports here forever. And, you're now immersed with the 5 reasons in covering all sports here in South Florida like nobody else does. So give us your characterization of what the whole experience was like.
It was pretty awesome, I'll say. I've covered, we talked about it before, I think I covered the Heat winning in Dallas, the Heat winning twice at home. I covered the Marlins at Yankee Stadium. I was in the elevator with Brian Cashman alone. The elevator was going up to see the boss. He was looking down. But it really is a unique experience to see players celebrating with their families on the ice, like to have Barkov like holding his child after he's holding the cup. It was, and the thing about it was this team was just so damn likable. And they really did something that I think was almost harder than winning the cup. Like a lot of Panther players, particularly because they're again foreign, Finnish, Russian, etc., were kind of nondescript to the general public down here. And hockey kind of lends itself to that too because of the helmets, because it's really skills are harder to separate and define in hockey. Like in basketball and football, okay, positions are specialized, right? So the quarterback does one thing, defensive tackle does another thing, right? So you kind of get to know them by their skill sets and all that, and then, in basketball, you see everybody's face. They're everywhere. Everybody knows this guy can shoot, this guy can dribble, this guy can defend. In hockey, it's just a bunch of guys running around with a puck to a lot of people, you know what I mean? Or skating around. But it's like I feel like South Florida knows them now.
Yes.
Like I you know what I mean? Like Barkov, it took a long time for the general public to kind of understand who he is and what he's about. And I think that's like he's just kind of like a lovable personality, like without a ton of personality, but there's like enough in there.
Yeah.
And Kachuk obviously has a certain personality and the way Reinhardt came on this year, and then the best story arc is honestly Bob, because if you think about it, like 2 years ago, I was in the arena and people were like chanting "Bob must go," and now they're chanting "Bobby, Bobby, Bobby." It really is one of the most remarkable turnaround stories.
He does come off though as history.
Like, and the coach is
go ahead
is great to deal with.
Oh, no, Paul Maurice. Unbelievable. I was going to say, Bobrovsky, somebody observed this, I saw on social media. He does come off like Latka from Taxi. Doesn't he?
A little weird, yeah.
A little bit? Yeah. My name, is Jose Jimenez or whatever. Yeah, it was a great story. Paul Maurice, we misjudged him completely, Scoop. We're not ashamed to admit that. We called him the French Joe Philbin. We thought he was kind of vapid there, and one of these guys that you're like, oh, geez, talk about a retread here to losing his coach in hockey history, and we got to hire him to fix what's wrong with the team. But, wow, Bill Zito, great job as an executive. Should be the sports executive of the year, I think, in all sports for the way that he not only transitioned from what he had to begin with, but then continued to make move after move that really turned out to be very prolific and and fortuitous for the Florida Panthers. All right, well, one final thing here. I don't know where you stand on this, but I don't know. The Dolphins not committing to Tua and the $50 million a year for like 4 or 5 years. What do you make of that? Where's that going? And is that going to have any big impact on the team? Because it seems like, and I have no knowledge of it, it just sounds like the way the rhetoric is going and the conversations that you see in the media, like nothing's happening until after the season.
Well, I mean, first thing, I wouldn't rule out something getting done the day before training camp.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm not saying that based on inside knowledge. I'm just saying that based on experience here, that the sides, tend to get a little bit more, not desperate. Desperate's
motivated.
Not the word,
they're motivated, yeah.
A little more serious right beforehand, and we see that with negotiations all the time. I would give him the extension.
You would.
That's where I'm at. Right. I believe in him. I don't think he's a top 5 guy without support, but I think with support, he's more than good enough, I think, to get them over the finish line. And I just, again, how many quarterbacks have they been through since Dan?
Yeah.
I mean, this is not easy. If it was, they would have found one other than 1 year of Chad Pennington and like some flashes of Jay Fiedler. Like I don't, and like Tannehill's 7 years. Well, this is the year he turns the corner. Like I just, 2016, I guess he did, and then he got hurt. So to me, I mean, you have somebody that players believe in. Like that's the thing. I mean, they're not faking it. Okay, it's obvious they believe in his leadership. They believe in him as a player, and the coach believes in him as a player. And people who believe in the coach but don't believe in the quarterback, it's kind of weird to me, because literally this is the single most important decision that the coach is making. I would extend him.
All right.
I would extend him. I think, it's one thing when you draft a guy and the guy is clearly not like Daniel Jones, right? And then you overpay Daniel Jones and all that, like, because of what? Because he had like 6 games. I mean, Tua has won for them. Again, I know until December. I get it. There have been some circumstances. But I've seen enough to say that you're not going to do better in the next couple of cycles. And to me, the money is cost of doing business. So if there's anything you can get in there, so it's a little more cap friendly. But again, the NFL cap is not the NBA cap. The NFL cap you can play with. Brandon Shore does a very good job with that. People don't really know him as well as they know Andy Ellisberg or whatever, but he does. And I would pay the man. And I have a hunch they're going to the night before training camp. But again, it's just a hunch.
Could you have ever seen yourself betting an over-under on Martin Murusap points in a summer league game if it existed at the time? The guy we hadn't even seen.
Should have bet the under. After Martin Murusap, there was an under on foreign players that Pat Riley would add.
I still remember when they showed us an artist rendering of the guy, because there was no video of him. And they literally held up a watercolor. It looked like a Trump trial, Scoop, you're great, man. We love you. All the best to you and all the people at 5 Reasons. Thanks so much for joining us here on the show. It's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Scoop Skolnick, ladies and gentlemen.
Look, as most of you do, he's on a lot of the programming here on 5 Reasons Sports Network. He'll jump on, which he does from time to time with our show, and we appreciate it. Ethan Skolnick is as good when it comes to Miami Heat information as anyone, and he is not actually. He leans Heat because he knows them well, and time again, they seem to find a way, no matter what the situation, to be relevant, and even to be a contender. He's been hard on them, but he's been honest. Look, they have told him, and he's just revealed to us, and I'm sure he's said on other programs here on 5 Reasons, They know what they have. They know their roster on paper isn't as scary as the Celtics or the Sixers or the Bucks. And to NBA people, especially in the Northeast, the Knicks roster and maybe the Cavs and the Pacers all may seem like they have more to offer because they're young and they're new and they're different. They're aware of that. And they have tried to do other things, and they still will try to do other things. But they also are good at growing from within. I said it before Ethan joined us. And if you follow the Heat, as much as you're frustrated that they're not improving and it's not an exciting offseason, every year their young guys seem to get better. And they seem to hang around. Their issue is injuries. I mean, that's their issue. And it's the issue for a lot of teams in the NBA. And it was the issue throughout the playoffs. The Celtics, outside of Porzingis, who you knew was going to get hurt because that's his whole career, everyone else stayed healthy. And the Celtics went through the East. Their record was great. Their games weren't. They weren't dominant in games. They were dominant in record because they were healthy and everyone else was hurt. And that's really what the Heat's big issue. Yeah, they need to get better that third star. Herro is not the third star. But the rest of the roster, if you've seen these guys play, you've seen these guys play in the playoffs, they're every bit as good as whatever the Pacers, the Magic, the Knicks, the Cavs have to offer. They are. They're not in that same group with the top three, the Sixers, Bucks, and Celtics. But again, the Heat always find a way to do something to make themselves relevant. It is Butler's contract year. You would presume that would be a better Butler. Bam, every regular season has gotten better. The problem for Bam is after the All-Star break, he falls apart because it feels like he's carrying the load defensively, and it's just too much for him to bear. We'll see. And Herro's actually been a good player. He's just not a star. He's not a third star on a contender. He's not. And the Heat know that, and we know that. So we'll see. I am not writing them off from making a move. I'm not writing them off from doing something because if they are admitting that they'd be delusional to not understand what the roster is, and they're not one to settle for not being a contender, it feels like something's coming down the pike. We shall see. We'll talk more about the Miami Heat. Yes, the Florida Panthers are champions. We'll talk more about them. The Marlins are a disaster. We won't talk much about them. But the Miami Dolphins are fun, interesting, back-to-back playoff team. This is a huge year for GM, for head coach, for quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. So we'll definitely talk more about them as things come on. You have college football coming up in next month. There will be college football. It's more than a month, but next month, August, there will be college football. So that's great. Wimbledon, all that. We'll talk all of that. Check us out each and every morning on South Florida Live, the YouTube or Facebook page. Check us out on our national podcast. We talk sports and more on the Believe Network, BLEAV.com. Search After Hours. And here, our South Florida skewed content, the Defo Show with Lubie on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Hey, folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs, unmatched. Steaks, hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar, and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.